Okay, so I think what we'll do is go ahead and get started. And first of all, I want to thank everybody for joining Agile Talks panel discussion. Today, we're going to be talking about mechanics without mindset. I'll get into a little more detail about what I mean by that. But first, I want to introduce our two other panelists. I'll start with Dr. Ron Darnell in Texas. Ron and I have worked together for a number of years, off and on, including over at Dex Media, which turned into Dex YP for Yellow Pages, right? And then over at Sony Pictures Entertainment, where he came in as a consultant on a short-term engagement as an Agile coach. And I'll let Ron talk a little bit more about himself in a second. And then John Hill. And John and I met over at Sony Pictures. Who's another enterprise Agile coach. And over at Sony, we call him the Wikipedia of Agile because his ability to cite authors and references since the Agile Manifesto and Scrum were developed is truly astonishing. So welcome, guys.
Good to be here.
So Ron, why don't you explain a little bit about your background, and then we'll let John have a minute or two, and then we'll get into things.
Well, as Chris said, we've worked together for over a number of years, and Dex YP is now called Thrive, by the way.
Right.
So changed their name again. And I've been doing Agile, or working in Agile environments, I should say, since about 2005. First Scrum project I worked on was back in 2003, maybe, something like that. It's been a long time ago. And I've done a number of these transformations, and, you know, they're difficult to do, and they have, the results are mixed. And so hopefully we can talk about maybe some ways to make that better on this call.
All right, thanks, Ron. And John?
Yeah, so I've worked with both Ron and Chris. I've been at Sony Pictures since March of 2017, so a little over 2 years. And I've been practicing Agile, mostly Scrum, since 2003. And I've got all the certifications, including the scaled Agile stuff and large-scale Scrum, less, and Kanban management professional, all that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, John. So today we're going to talk about, I like to call mechanics without mindset. So John had sent out a recent article from a fellow by the name of Gil Broza, which was essentially talking about the continued focus on what I like to call mechanics, and he cited mechanics in his article, but more of the process side, the doing of Agile. So by that I mean the focus and optimization of the practice, the delivery framework, whether it be Scrum, Kanban, XP, name your delivery framework. But yet Gil had noticed, and I think we can talk to this a little bit, that regardless of how many sprints or how many iterations a team had been going through in practicing the mechanics, how much focus was spent on that, the teams were kind of just checking boxes along the way without really practicing and seeing the benefits of all the other facets of being Agile. And there's a huge number of reasons that lead to that. Gil went on to say in his article that really there's not enough focus on, the quote-unquote mindset portion of Agile. So servant leadership and safety and a growth mindset. Ron and I have talked about this a lot lately. Growth, basically equals, Agile mindset. And by that we mean more of a learning culture, experimentation, accepting and learning from failure quickly, and more towards the effort that you're putting into to learn and grow. And that's where you really start, which ultimately results in happier teams and ultimately leads in higher productivity. So this was really for us a jump off point, and Gil's article, that is, and I think we've all seen it. I've certainly seen it. I just left Sony Pictures on Friday. I had resigned a couple weeks back, and I had some interesting and very transparent exit interviews, and I talked a lot about that. And some people that I talked with there really agreed with the fact that those things hadn't been focused on, and there's only so far we can go to an agile, in this agile transformation, at least at Sony. And I like to think of it as a difference between, an agile transformation at the, at the team level. All of our teams are doing things to true business agility, where it's really ingrained in the ethos of the company. It's practiced and evident by the senior leadership team all the way down to, the managers and the people. So let me hear from from Ron maybe first in his experience, what he's seeing out there between the mindset and the mechanics.
Well, the mindset, you've got to have that growth mindset if you're going to make this work. And typically, a good indicator of someone that does not have the growth mindset is going to see, experimentation as a waste of time. Basically, they're goal oriented. They're not willing to go through the iterations of developing or innovating, and they're going to want to maintain the status quo, basically. And I've been in several organizations where they just go through the motions. They do a really good job of having their stand-ups. They do the retrospectives, but they're just, like you say, checking off the box. There's no mental change going on there. They're changing what they're doing, but they have the same mindset they had when using traditional methods. I've been reading a book by Stephen Denning. He talks about agile management, and he talks about how it takes the mindset has to come from the teams, and then it has to be supported from the top down with incentives and rewards, payment, change the way you compensate people and things like that. And I think a lot of what I see is they want to maintain their existing bureaucracy and the pay schedule they have, and so there's really no incentive for these people to change. They're just doing what they're told, and I see that a lot. And what happens is after the transformation coaches leave, they bring in these consultants and they spend lots and lots of money, and then within a few months they're reverted right back to their old ways of doing things. So,
yeah,
so
definitely.
a lot of wasted time.
Yeah, definitely. John, what are you seeing out there?
I'm seeing the same patterns. You see these leaders, they've lost sight of the 4 Agile values and the 12 principles. So they don't have the right mindset, and the decisions that they make don't take into account all of those principles and practices that they should take into account. Like Ron said, the whole different way of even hiring criteria for people, rewards for people, focusing on teams versus rock star individuals, all that kind of stuff is missing. They're just checking off the boxes, and they've lost sight of the rest of the things that are needed to implement Agile properly. They're not looking at a multitasking. They've got people working on too many things a lot of the time, and they're just they've lost sight of the foundations.
Yeah, definitely, man. There's a lot of things I'm seeing out there too, and I think those are a lot of things that Gil Rosa cites in this article. And I, as part of my exit interview process with Sony, I mean, those were some of the things that I was bringing up as well. And it was, if people tend to replicate, the patterns and attitude of their seniors, their superiors, managers all the way up. And some of the most successful agile transformations that I've seen, they've instituted and really supported continuous learning. Some companies like Google and Facebook give people a full day every week to just go work on whatever the hell they want to work on. I mean, talk about, and then they walk around and, from the CIO down and the CEO down, what are you working on? How can I help you? Let's see some of your ideas. And that's really where the innovation, I think, happens. And you have all these talented people, but you're you're not giving them the space and the time. You're not willing to invest in that experimentation. You're not willing to invest for them to continuously learn. I've seen other companies set aside half a day on Fridays where all they do is they stop working. They actually, cannot work on anything. They can take join webinars, go to classes, read books and blogs, etc. But it's really, really enforced, and I think that's a missing component to developing a learning culture. The other thing I see is in the safety environment, but the way that even a superior, a manager or a VP or a CIO is responding to people when they have bad news. People clam up. It's not transparent. So, all those things. But, I think, and I definitely want to hear from you guys what you think, can help. What are some things that you've seen out there more specifically in a practical setting that you've witnessed from senior leadership down, from safety, from a learning organization or a learning culture, et cetera, that you've seen out there, and some ideas that you've had, along the way that you think could help, help with that, help drive that, and make it part of the company ethos and the company culture. Ron, you want to go first on some ideas and what you're feeling?
Well, I think the first thing is the teams or the individuals within the organization have to feel like this safe space that we've talked about in other calls. They have to be able to feel safe to make this change, to fail and learn from that failure and not be ostracized for it or punished for it. They need to feel like they can make those changes. They have to feel empowered to make decisions, and the decisions have to be respected. And then the management needs to change the way they incentivize. Ultimately, they need to change the way they incentivize people, because if your performance is measured by some antiquated objective that's no longer valid, you're going to go right back to how you're getting paid. And so, for me, I think that's one of the big things. The company where I'm doing some work at now has just started on that journey, and they have spent probably the whole past year working with their HR department to come up with new ways to incentivize people that it's at the team level now, and they're valued by their team, how their evaluation is going to work out. And that's an interesting concept, and it's new to me because most places I've been, they don't take it that far.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's an awesome strategy, I think. And if they're supporting that and giving people the space and investing in that, I mean, it's just going to really help change that anti-pattern into a positive, growth mindset pattern.
Yeah, I have a similar experience. I was at Cisco for 14 months before I went to Sony, and they actually had leaders that made sure that the teams were the right size, that the team members weren't reporting to a Scrum Master or a product owner. They also had HR redefine all of the existing job descriptions to be different within Agile, and even the criteria for hiring people. It was no longer like, balancing multiple things and all that kind of stuff. It was more helping others and, making teams succeed and all that kind of thing. And another thing they did that was good was they actually brought a lot of the offshore people onshore. So that helped the work-life balance quite a bit. They sometimes had like one UI person or UX person that was, in a different country. And that required the team to have Scrum at night or in the morning. And by changing that, by bringing that person onshore, it really worked a lot better. And we were really able to make some good progress there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think those are all good ideas.
Well, another thing that really helped at another organization I was at is the management, so to speak, was outcome. They really did practice we tell the teams what we want done, and it was up to us to figure out how to do it. And as long as we were keeping the customer happy, they stayed out of the team's business. So we could have if we wanted to go offsite and have our planning meetings or whatever, they didn't care. As long as the customer was happy, it was great. And that was the kind of freedom that they needed to experiment. And the team got very, very innovative, and they got very, very productive if they just left to themselves.
Yeah.
That's it. The manifesto. Trust the teams to get the job done.
Yeah. I had a really interesting conversation maybe a year ago or 2 years ago. I actually posted a little thing on my LinkedIn thing about it, but I was sitting there with the new Scrum Master. She was from Zambia, Africa, and she was talking about a trip that she had made with her daughters to the zoo here in Dallas. And the zoo here in Dallas is like old school zoo. It was at the time anyway. And she was she was talking about how unfortunate it was that these animals were in these cages, and that she noticed how lethargic they were and how they didn't seem to have any purpose. And she was contrasting that to how they got those big reserves in her country that are just, thousands and thousands of acres, and the lions and everything are all kind of in their natural environment. And she talked about how alert they were and how alive they were. And we got later in the day, was sitting in a meeting where it was a safe team, and the what they call a release train engineer was complaining that they weren't meeting the Scrum team wasn't meeting their velocity goals and that kind of stuff. And so they kind of said, well, we want to help, and to help, we're going to make you do this bi-weekly health check survey thing. And you could just see the wind go out of these guys, and it reminded me of how my friend had explained these animals. And I call it scalecosis. The teams get so caught up in this process that it just steals all of the joy from the work out of them. And so that was one of the observations I had with her. It was very interesting.
Yeah, that actually is really interesting. And, what I've been pointing back to time and time again with all this, I think a lot of organizations are still continuing to miss the boat on is, what's the first principle in the Agile Manifesto? Why are we all doing this? It's people over process and tools, but there continues to be so much focus on process and clearly not on a focus on people. Happy teams leads to, less turnover, definitely higher and longer retention rates and, more productivity ultimately. But yet it's catastrophically overlooked. And, I think that with a lot of the attention it's getting now, I'm actually happy to see it, because a lot of people are now saying, oh, wait a minute, there's all these other facets to these transformations, and, I think, John, you could probably.
It's gotten slow.
Oh, it got slow for you? John, I think you could support me on this, but, it just seems like in all too often, CIOs and senior leadership are just saying, hey, let's check the box and do an agile transformation. I think just rolling out Scrum or Kanban is we got 65 teams or 70 teams doing it. All of a sudden now we're welcome back, Ron. All of a sudden now we've got all of our teams or the tipping point, as you define it, more than half of our teams are practicing Scrum. So we're doing great in our transformation. But yeah,
you're right. A lot of the leadership doesn't get it, and they're still focused on the wrong outcomes. They want to, they're looking at Agile as a way to do headcount reduction and cost reduction and, losing sight of getting to market sooner and doing all of the things that are really the more important reasons for doing Agile. A lot of people have the traditional viewpoint of just, trying to cut costs and, look at Agile as a way to. So a lot of leaders think that Agile is like the waterfall going really fast.
Yeah,
they
it's
don't.
Interesting. That to me is really playing the short game.
Yep.
And I think if you play the short game, you're ultimately going to lose people, not reap all the benefits of reaching true business agility. But if you focus on the long game with the people first, that's how you're going to build a truly agile organization that people want to work at and love what they do and feel supported. They can grow. And I think that's the difference. What do you think, Ron?
Yeah, they need to, like I said, they need to have the right safe space, the right incentives. The management needs to trust them to get the job done. That's one of the principles of Agile. I don't know exactly which principle it is, but it's
out
trust
there.
the people to get the job done.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think everybody hits this barrier in their transformation. It's obviously an easy place to start. It's something that you can measure right away. It's hard sometimes to measure team morale and things like that, but it's it's something that I see even in senior, like again, I go back to senior leadership. I definitely feel it has to be not just supported by senior leadership. You can't just have a senior leadership team at the C level saying, we support you learning, we support you growing, we support you experimenting. They have to really, really, they have to walk the talk. They really do. Even in their behaviors, when most people are twitching in their seat when they're getting in front of a meeting where they see the CIO in an elevator and he asks how a project's going and he's all stoic and very tense and they're scared to deliver that news. But that bad news, if they have bad news, or they have an idea, they've got to take that and they've got to basically they have to start to practice and adopt a growth mindset themselves. I think that's the only way it'll trickle down throughout the organization. Without that, you're capped on how far you can go with an agile transformation. And quite frankly, until those people leave and there's a new leadership team in place.
Well, most of these people have been successful in a what I call a tournament hierarchy business. Like they work their way up the level by winning like a tournament, and so that's what they're used to operating in. And anything that comes in that's different tends to threaten that.
Right.
And they may want to do agile because they're getting pressure from the internal people or maybe even customers, but it's still a threat to their way of doing business, and it's a change. A true agile transformation is a complete change of the organization, and it creates a cooperative hierarchy, not a tournament hierarchy. The cooperative hierarchy is based on collaboration, not on competition. And
right.
So these guys have to get, and they have to change the way they view their role, and they have to become more servant leaders. And one of the books I've read that I think it was one of the generals in Iraq or someplace, he had to transform the people out there in a more collaborative, like a big network of collaborative teams, and he said he had to feel more like a gardener than a commander, and so he had to change his mindset like that, and it was difficult for him to come to.
Yeah, I think you're right. Anything that maybe when they feel a sense of discomfort with these changes and they've worked so hard, and they're used to operating a certain way, it's very, very difficult. And I honestly think the hardest part of these transformations is working with senior leadership, working with those upper level, management layers to, change their mindset or help them get towards, adopting that mindset. John, what do you think about, the leadership down? And
yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you see me? I lost the visual, but
yep, we can see you. I can.
Okay. Anyway, a lot of the leaders got to where they are now because of the behaviors that Ron cited. They're used to performing heroics. They're very command and control. They crack the whip. They get things done. They, take responsibility for others' work, that kind of thing. And until they can shed that whole thing, there are a lot of Scrum Masters and product owners even that I know now that are rewarded more because they're more like a project manager that's, keeping track of everything that everybody's doing. And that just deflates the team and it doesn't work.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, a huge problem out there. And like I said, I'm happy to see that there's more literature. There's books out about growth mindsets and agile mindset and changing your behavioral patterns and things like that. And people I think are listening and people are seeing it, even people internally within organizations. But it's a hard thing to start because there's so much resistance to Ron's points. Certain senior leadership, if they don't change, it's just not going to happen. It's just, there's no way. It literally has to be baked into the ethos of the organization. And without it, it's not going to trickle down. And these people, like some of the folks that I met with, exiting, that they really want this to happen. But how do they get it? How do they frame it? How do they sell it to senior leadership? And senior leadership is so focused on metrics. It's just, unfortunately, right now, it's the wrong metric. It's lead time and work in process time and things like that. Very process level metrics. And without seeing organizational and cultural type metrics, it's like, where do they start? So a lot of it just gets kind of, they don't feel safe to bring it up. And it seems like a massive endeavor.
You're right.
It's an interesting picture there, John.
What? What are you seeing?
I don't know what we're seeing.
It looks like your shirt.
I don't want to guess.
Oh yeah, I closed the thing a little so
Well, Chris, I think it's an opportunity for coaches all over the world, and there's we've been talking with our friend Kyle about his diamond thing, and one of the places is this executive layer of management. They need. I think they've been kind of left out. That kind of we just assume that they're going to they're spending this money, they ought to get in line, but they don't, right? So there's an opportunity, I think, for us as coaches to help those people to do that executive level, and it's a different approach, I think, than what we would do with the teams and maybe even with the Scrum Masters and some of the other like product owner type people. It's a different kind of way to get to coach these, because I do think mindsets can be, you can acquire a mindset, and most of us have different, one thing we may have a growth mindset, in another area we may have a fixed mindset, and so we're malleable in that respect, and I think there's a great opportunity for our coaches to help this along and become more focused on that level, because I think in ourselves sometimes we get hired in and we come in and they say, hey, we want to transform to Scrum, and I don't think they really understand what transform means. I think what they mean is, what they say is transform, but what they do is transition.
Right. Yeah, that's great. I love that.
Yeah. And so that's where I think there's a good opportunity for us to work with people in the higher levels of management to coach them on how to acquire this fixed mindset, this growth mindset that need and when to have the fixed mindset, because there's still a good role for managers. They got to set the direction. There's still budgets and contracts and all that stuff to deal with, which may require a fixed mindset. But when it comes to how you delight your customers, you need to have a growth mindset on that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, people focus on the software development methodology a lot of times and lose complete sight of the organizational requirements for trusting people and all that.
Yeah,
I think it's a great opportunity for people that do what we do to maybe start managing up a little bit instead of the horizontally like we usually do.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. And I think that,
are y'all still there?
Yeah, we're here. Can you hear us?
I can't see anything, but I'm here.
Ron, you back with us? Oh, you just froze up. Okay, Ron will be right back. So, I think Ron brings up a really good point. It's the bottom up or top down approach, whereas bottom up focuses on the process and getting teams to do X, Y, and Z, do the mechanics. And the top down is more of how are we managing, and how are we thinking about things? How are we exposing that to the rest of the organization. So I think you really, I see a turn right now, and I see that even the most recent State of Agile report that just came out last week, cites that time and time again. It's and I think, John, you read through it as well, and it was all of a sudden number 3 on the list behind reducing costs and I forgot what the second one is, but the third one was, happier teams.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Over the years, this is like the 13th year of that report. In the very beginning, it was the opposite. It was like cost reduction was the most important thing. And now it's going the other direction. Like the right stuff is finally bubbling up to the top.
It is. Yeah, it definitely is. But I think, as Ron said, there's, tremendous opportunity for people like us who do what we do, to start, advocating and campaigning for some of that change. If no one else is going to do it, we're, enterprise agile coaches, even scrum masters are, starting at that level with their teams. Hey, why not work on some of those principles and work towards getting people more into, a growth mindset. And as Ron said, there's a place for both fixed and growth. And,
I think also another good thing we just began to do at Sony, we have these leadership sessions where we go through all these scenarios and people really think about different kinds of behavior and all that. But even more importantly, doing the psychological safety stuff we're doing with the teams to see how much filtering they have to do when they communicate to other people.
Yeah, 100%.
Get rid of the filtering and get the transparency to be not punished and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ron just joined back. Let's see.
I don't see anything, but you guys said you could see me. Ron said he just saw my shirt before, but that's because I don't know what I'm doing here.
Okay, it's hard for me to tell which Ron is Ron. I got 2 Rons here.
Ron, are you there?
Yeah, I'm going to leave and come back in, so I'll be right back.
You're very quiet. That's because he's in Oklahoma. That's far away.
It could be. Let me take...
So, Chris, how many other people are on the call? I don't see the numbers anymore.
Did you see him before?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't see. All I see is a big screen that says Zoom.
Oh.
I don't see any pictures or anything else. So.
Well, we've only got a handful of people on the call, but again, we're recording this. So, we're coming up on about 6:45. I think we had a lot of good discussion about this topic. I mean, net, it's something that is starting to get some more focus. Ron, we're just talking about, to your point, that it's a great opportunity for folks like us to get behind it, campaign, make sure that at least we're doing our part to, raise awareness of this and the importance of it, and, build the relationships where we could affect some of that change and start those, start some of that. So,
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you guys have anything, we didn't get into a lot of detail about the specifics of a growth mindset and things like that, but, Gil's article that we read, and I will definitely put this on the website, agiletalks.co, agiletalks.co, along with the recorded webinar here for people to check out anytime. I'll also put it in our LinkedIn group, an Agile Talks, the Agile Talks on LinkedIn. I mean, I think you guys have any kind of closing, thoughts? I mean, I think that was a great article by Gil. I'll circulate that on agiletalks.co as well. But it's it's something that, regardless, my key takeaways from this conversation and Gil's article were that, regardless of how much you continue to optimize at the process level, if there's not systemic change in, the mindset from the top down within an organization, you really are never going to reap the true benefits of an agile transformation. I
Well,
know it's a bold statement, but
I've seen statistics out there that say like 70-some% of the transformations fail. And there are organizations that just keep doing it until they get it. But it's like I said, it's a long journey for most organizations. And one of the things I've noticed, a stark difference, is those transformations that are kind of started out at a distributed level, if you will, like, within the teams and kind of build their way up with support down from the top, tend to do better than the ones where you sit in an office and plan for 3 months and roll out this big transformation thing, and basically you're managing a transformation like you would an old project. And in order for the transformation to work, it has to be agile too.
Yeah, 100%.
And I wanted to put in a plug also for both of Gil's books. His book on the Agile mindset really does a much deeper dive into what his short article had. And also the human side of Agile is really pretty awesome, that book.
Yeah.
I think we could do a whole nother one of these just on mindset. So.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think, like I said, and I firmly believe that, this is really an opportunity to finally, for all the coaches out there, those that are, viewing this now, listening, that will, to really start to campaign and get behind and push, the larger, benefit, which is people, and shifting from that to that more of the growth mindset, a safe environment, servant leadership, all the true benefits of an agile transformation. Checking boxes on Scrum and getting X amount of teams in the organization to be practicing. I think Ron said it best a little while ago that we're not transforming teams to agile. We're transitioning teams, to just a different way of working.
Yeah.
But the real benefits aren't seen, at least not yet, without a shift in mentality from the senior leadership down. That's when you really start to see the true benefits of what we're out there trying to do. So.
Yep. Strongly agree.
Yeah. So John or Ron, do you guys have any closing comments? Anything you want to talk about? Oh, we got a question.
All right.
Let's take a question from Surya. So Surya asks, what do you think as a Scrum Master I can do at my level to make my teams move towards a growth mindset and agility embedded in the team culture? Because with not much support from the leadership, it sometimes becomes practice-based and the true benefits are not realized. Great question, sir. Anybody want to take this?
Yeah, let me give a quick stab at it. There's a really good article that Mike Cohn wrote on situational leadership for Scrum Masters. It talks about when you first have a team and you tell them to self-organize and you just leave them alone, they don't do anything. So there's like 4 stages the Scrum Master needs to go through in order to empower the team. The first one, it's a telling, you're more command and control, but then you transition to be a selling relationship, then participating, and then finally delegating. And it gives lots of really important little things you can do. It's on mountaingoatsoftware.com on situational leadership. It's about 10 or 15 pages long, and it's for Scrum Masters to empower teams. It's pretty good.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and we've got some more. I think Ron will probably want to weigh into this and I will as well. But so John, send me that link to that article if you would, and I'll post it up in our Agile Talks LinkedIn group as well as on the agiletalks.co group.
And we'll do that tonight or tomorrow.
Awesome. So look out for it by tomorrow, Surya. And then Ron, do you want to weigh in on this as well? What are your thoughts?
Well, one of the roles of a Scrum Master is to protect the team from outside influences. And so the most that you can can do that to give the team that space they need to work together. Keep the workers, if you will, out of the team retrospectives. Let the team come up with their own improvement plans. Have them own the work as much as possible. And you can't. One of the things I see sometimes the product owners get into this command situation where they're demanding what they want. They can talk about what they want, but they don't need to get into the details of how. And that's where you can kind of put up that little force field, if you will, around the team and say, look, you've said what you want. We know what you want. So let us figure out how to do it. And we'll let you know if we can do it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. When Ken Schwaber first talked about the role of the Scrum Master, he likened it to a sheepdog that protected the flock from the predators and also rounded up the strays. So the point about the protection is important.
Yeah.
If you don't have much support, it's going to be difficult because you'll have a lot of upset stakeholders, these lurkers, as I call them, and, kind of the tier 2 people. They're not the core team members. And you need to negotiate with them to say, look, you give us the space and we'll produce results. And if I've seen it probably, I don't know, everywhere I go, when I can make this happen, is that if we can get the other stakeholders to trust the team, that trust is rewarded with performance.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I'm going to take a stab at answering this as well. But, I think there are little kind of practical things you can do to start, just coaching, at the team level towards a growth mindset. The retrospectives are a good point for that, but you don't have to wait. The main difference, I think, between, at least how like Kanban would work is Kanban more of a instant, continuous optimization type of mindset. So when you look for opportunities to optimize or get better at something, you do them right then and there. You don't wait for the end of an iteration to then implement those. But I think what you can do is really work with the team to, when say, for instance, a team commits, and I'm just going to use a very, very low-level practical example, but say the team commits to completing 100 story points, but they only get 60 of them done. Instead of, getting on the team's case about, we committed to this and, et cetera, you could try saying, involving the team to look for, hey, I appreciate everyone's effort, but we didn't come close to achieving what we had all set out to achieve. And why do you think that happened? Gather the feedback. Turn it into an opportunity for them to say, hey, I tried something, we committed, we didn't reach our goal, but what did we learn along the way? And, that's a very good one. And then work with the team, generate some ideas from the team and how they get better, and then let them experiment with that, into the next iteration or sprint. Let them experiment that in ways to get better. Let them know that it is okay to sometimes not achieve everything they set out to achieve, but we're going to work together, and I'm going to give you the space, and I'm going to give you the voice to come up with some ideas to get better. And over time, they will start to look for those opportunities more and more. And that starts to get into more of a growth mindset. So there are very practical things you can do at the team level. Engage your team for ideas, support your team to experiment with some of those ideas. Don't respond to negative news. Say a story is blocked, earlier or midway through a sprint. The difference between a fixed mindset would be why, coming after, almost reprimanding somebody for a story being blocked or something along those lines. But, instead of growth mindset is, let's work together. How can I support you to clear this block? And what can we do working together to prevent this from happening in the future? That starts to give people, a safer environment to operate within. And when you do that, you're ultimately going to get more productivity. They're going to take more ownership of what they're doing. Anyway, those are just some ideas off the top of my head at that level. But I think let me know if that helped. Just give me a thumbs up or shoot me a little message. But
Yeah, and Chris, there's also another good article. I think I sent it out a few weeks ago about when you do sprint planning, don't try to plan everything for the whole sprint. It was like, get 60 to 70% of the plan done, and then during the sprint, you'll fill in the rest of the plan. So it helps you not set yourself up for failure by, committing to do too much up front.
yeah, I think that's a good one. And I've worked with some teams that there's very hard, deadline-driven dates, targets that need to be met, and they know the work well in advance of what needs to be done. So it becomes a pretty fixed structure, but that gets into a whole other set of, strategies and tactics. So anyway, we can share. John, if you want to share that article, I'll put it on the Agile.
Yeah,
Talk.
I'll find them both tonight or tomorrow and send them to you, and you can stick them out there.
Cool, and you're very welcome, Surya, for.
Yes, thank you. We had one engaged person.
It varies, but it's good. Hey, I'll take it. We can help one person on these webinars. That's
right.
That's to me. So, any other questions from the audience? Any ideas you want to share? I can bring you on video or the mic, or you can type them into our webinar chat here. We'll give people a few seconds, and then if not, if there's any closing comments from the Ron John show.
Not from John. I'll just send those 2 links that I think are pretty good.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, John.
Well, for our inaugural chat, it was fun.
It was. I had a lot of fun, and I will share this out. If you haven't joined the Agile Talks LinkedIn group, please head over to LinkedIn, search for the Agile Talks. Join us, because we'll have a lot more webinars. We've got some great speakers and interviews coming up that'll be live Q&A sessions. We've got some very key influencers that are going to be coming on the show with us in the coming weeks and months. So we'll have a lot of cool stuff coming up, and you can also visit agiletalks.co as kind of a jump-off point to get to the Facebook group, the LinkedIn groups, listen to the podcasts, et cetera, et cetera. So thanks for joining. It's great having you guys. I will get this out for you guys to share that we're attending, and I will share this out with our respective LinkedIn groups, et cetera, maybe by end of day tomorrow. So I think unless there's any questions, that's a wrap.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for joining. Happy Mother's Day for any mothers out there.
I know 2 of them.
I do too.
All right.
All right. Take care, guys. Have a good night.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.